After 3 years of waiting, she gave herself to a shy husband as a birthday gift. Hi, my most beloved, most cherished, and irreplaceable family. How are you today, my heart and soul? This is your Mr. Peter, and I speak to you from a place of infinite love, respect, and gratitude. You are not just part of this journey. You are my reason for living, my inspiration, and my strength. My beautiful queens, my brave kings, my precious daughters and sons, you are the essence of everything good in my life. Your love fuels my every step, and I am beyond blessed to have each of you in my world. A prayer that comes from the depths of my heart. May the angels surround you with protection, and may the light of divine love shine brightly upon your path. I pray that every worry you have is replaced with peace, every hardship with hope, and every tear with joy. May you be uplifted by grace, filled with strength that you never knew you had, and surrounded by an unbreakable shield of love. I ask that every door you knock on be opened with favor, every dream be made real, and every moment be touched by the hand of God. You are not just important. You are everything, and your worth is immeasurable. You are my heart's deepest blessing. Thank you, my precious family, for your unwavering love and support. Can we reach 1,000 likes on this video, my beautiful family? And today, I ask you from the depths of my heart, promise me you'll bring at least one friend into this story, one soul to feel what we feel, one heart to experience the love we share. Please like, comment, share, and invite someone special to join our family of love, power, and joy. Let's begin with all the strength, warmth, and love in my heart, my beautiful, irreplaceable family. The first light of dawn painted the Manhattan skyline in shades of rose and gold, but Ginny Morris Wood had been awake for hours, lying perfectly still in their king-sized bed, watching her husband sleep. Brandon's face, usually so guarded during waking hours, had softened in slumber. His dark lashes cast shadows on his cheeks, and his lips, those lips that had never properly kissed her, were slightly parted. 3 years, 1,095 days of marriage, and she could count on one hand the times he'd touched her. Ginny's fingers itched to trace the strong line of his jaw, to run through his dark hair that fell across his forehead. But she didn't dare. Even in sleep, Brandon seemed to sense when she moved too close, instinctively shifting away as if her touch might burn him. The memory of their wedding day washed over her like it did every morning, a bittersweet tide of hope and disappointment. She had been radiant in her grandmother's lace gown, walking down the aisle of St. Patrick's Cathedral with her heart so full she thought it might burst. Brandon had looked at her with such intensity, such raw emotion, that she'd nearly stumbled on the last steps to the altar. "You're breathtaking," he'd whispered when her father placed her hand in his. His fingers had trembled against hers, and, for that moment, she'd believed in fairy tales. The ceremony had been perfect. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Brandon had cupped her face with infinite tenderness, his thumbs brushing her cheeks. The kiss he gave her was soft, sweet, almost reverent, but heartbreakingly brief. She'd leaned into him, wanting more, but he'd already pulled back, his green eyes dark with something she couldn't name. Their reception had been a glittering affair at the plaza, hundreds of New York's elite toasting to their happiness. Brandon had held her during their first dance, his hand warm on the small of her back, but always maintaining that careful distance. When guests clinked glasses demanding kisses, he'd brush his lips against her forehead or cheek, never her mouth. "Ah, you happy?" he'd murmured during a quiet moment, his breath warm against her ear. Incredibly, she'd answered, and it had been true. She was marrying the man she loved desperately, the man who looked at her like she was his whole world. That night, in their honeymoon suite overlooking Central Park, Ginny had emerged from the bathroom in the silk negligee her mother had given her, cream-colored and delicate as a whisper. Brandon had been standing by the window, still in his tuxedo pants and white shirt, his bow tie hanging loose. He'd turned at the sound of the door, and she'd watched him stop breathing. His hands had clenched at his sides, and something wild had flashed in his eyes before he controlled it. "Ginny," he'd said, her name a prayer and a plea. She'd crossed to him, her heart hammering, and placed her hands on his chest. Through the fine cotton of his shirt, she could feel his heart racing to match hers. "I'm your wife now," she'd whispered, rising on her toes to kiss him. He'd caught her face in his hands, stopping her. "Not yet, my love," he'd said, his voice rough with emotion. "You're too precious, too perfect. I need to be worthy of you first." The rejection had stung, but the naked longing in his eyes had soothed it. He'd held her that night, fully clothed, whispering words of love and promise. She'd fallen asleep, believing it was just nervousness, that tomorrow would be different, but tomorrow had become 1,000 tomorrows, and nothing had changed. Now, in the pale morning light, Ginny studied the man she'd married. Brandon Wood, possessed, an almost unfair beauty, tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of bone structure that made photographers weep. But his looks hadn't captured her. It was how he listened when she spoke, truly listened, as if her words were the most important thing in the world. How he remembered every detail, her coffee preference, her favorite flower, the song that made her cry. He stirred slightly, and Ginny held her breath. But he only turned away, leaving more space between them. She slipped from the bed, her silk pajamas whispering against her skin. Their penthouse was a marvel of modern design, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows, but it felt cold, empty, like a museum rather than a home. Padding barefoot to the kitchen, she started the coffee maker, a ritual as familiar as breathing. While it brewed, she gazed out at the city awakening below. Somewhere out there, other couples were waking up tangled in each other, sharing lazy morning kisses, making love in the soft light. The coffee maker gurgled, and she poured 2 cups, doctoring Brandon's exactly how he liked it. Black with 1. Sugar. Such a small thing, but it was one of the few ways she could care for him that he allowed. She carried the cups back to the bedroom, setting his on his nightstand. He was awake now, propped against the headboard, that careful mask already in place. "Good morning," she said softly, perching on the edge of the bed. "Morning." His voice was deep, husky from sleep, his eyes tracking her movements as they lingered. On the way, the morning light caught in her honey-blonde hair. "You're up early." Couldn't sleep. She cradled her cup, using it as a shield. "I was thinking about our anniversary coming up." Something flickered in his expression. Pain? Regret? It was gone too quickly to read. 3 years, he said quietly. "Has it been terrible being married to me?" The question caught her off guard. "Brandon, no, I love you. She struggled for words that wouldn't sound like accusations. "I miss you. Even when you're right here, I miss you." He closed his eyes, his jaw tightening. "Ginny, do you ever think about our wedding night?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "Do you ever wonder what it would have been? Like if every day," his voice was raw, honest, "every single day her heart leapt. Then why? What are you so afraid of?" He was out of bed before she could blink, creating distance between them. "I have an early meeting. I should shower. Brandon, please, talk to me." He paused at the bathroom door, his back to her. His shoulders were rigid with tension. "Some things are better left alone, Ginny. Trust me on this." The bathroom door closed with a quiet click, and she heard the shower start. She sat on the bed, frustration and hurt warring in her chest. 3 years of these half-conversations, these moments where he almost opened up before retreating behind his walls. She finished her coffee and dressed for her day, a volunteer board meeting for the children's hospital, lunch with her sister. Brandon emerged from the bathroom in a towel, water droplets still clinging to his chest. Ginny averted her eyes, hating how he could make her feel like an intruder in her own bedroom. "I'll be late tonight," he said, disappearing into his walk-in closet. "Don't wait up." "You're always late." She hadn't meant to say it, but the words escaped anyway. He reappeared, buttoning a pristine white shirt. "Are you unhappy?" The directness of the question surprised her. She met his gaze steadily. "Yes, not with you, but with this, the distance. The careful way you avoid touching me. The way you look at me sometimes, like your heart is breaking, then turn away." He crossed to her in 3 strides, stopping just out of reach. For a moment, she thought he might actually touch her. His hand lifted, hovering near her cheek before dropping to his side. "If you knew," he started, then stopped. "Ginny, I would give anything to be the husband you deserve. Anything." "I don't want anything. I just want you." Pain flashed across his features. He turned away, grabbing his jacket. "I'll see you tonight." And he was gone, leaving her alone in their beautiful, empty bedroom. Later that night, unable to sleep again, Ginny wandered the penthouse. She found herself in the wing Brandon used as his home office, a space she rarely entered. One door was always locked, his private study, he'd said, where he kept sensitive documents. Tonight the door stood slightly ajar. Heart pounding, she pushed it open. The room was dimly lit by city lights filtering through the windows. Her breath caught. Walls were covered with photographs of her, hundreds of them. Pictures from their courtship, their wedding, candid shots from their life together. In the corner stood an easel with a half-finished painting, her profile as she read in the library last week. "Oh, Brandon," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. She heard footsteps and turned to find him in the doorway, still in his suit from his late meeting. His face was stricken. "You weren't supposed to see this." "Why?" She gestured at the walls. "Why document every moment of my life but never live it with me?" He entered the room slowly, as if approaching a spooked animal. "Because this is all I allow myself. Watching you, capturing your beauty, your light. It's all I can have." "Why?" The word came out as a sob. "What are you so afraid of?" He stood before her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the pain etched in every line of his face. "I'm afraid of destroying you, of taking your light and turning it to darkness. I've done it before. And I won't let it happen to you. Brandon, please," his voice broke. "Please don't ask me to explain, just let me love you the only way I can. From a distance, where you're safe." She reached for him, but he was already backing away. "It's late. You should rest." He left her there, surrounded by images of herself, each one a testament to a love so deep it had become a prison for them both. In their bedroom, she lay in the darkness, listening to him pace in his study. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. The city that never slept continued its restless dance while she lay awake. 3 years into a marriage that had never truly begun, loving a man who seemed determined to break both their hearts to save her from something she didn't understand. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she would find out what haunted Brandon Wood. Tomorrow she would fight for their marriage. But tonight she simply cried into her pillow, muffling the sounds so he wouldn't hear, and come to comfort her, always offering everything except the one thing she needed most: his touch, his love, his trust. Chapter 2. Anniversary Hopes. The florist had looked at Ginny strangely when she'd ordered 300 white roses. "Having a party?" the woman had asked, tallying the astronomical cost. "No," Ginny had replied with a secretive smile. "Just dinner for 2. Now, standing in their bedroom as the sun dipped below the Manhattan skyline, she surveyed her handiwork with a mixture of hope and desperation. Rose petals carpeted the floor, creating a path from the door to the bed. Candles flickered on every surface, the dresser, the nightstands, the mantelpiece, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The air was heavy with perfume and promise. 3 years had passed. Tonight would be different. Tonight she would shatter the walls Brandon had built around himself. She checked her reflection one last time in the full-length mirror. The silk robe was ivory, not white. She wasn't a virgin bride anymore, even if technically she still was. It clung to her curves, the delicate lace drawing attention to her silhouette. Her hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and she'd applied just enough makeup to enhance her features without looking overdone. Beautiful, desirable. Everything a wife should be for her husband. The sound of the elevator chiming in the foyer made her heart race. She heard Brandon's footsteps in the hallway, the pause as he noticed the trail of roses leading from the front door. Her pulse thundered in her ears as his steps drew closer. The bedroom door opened slowly. Brandon stood frozen, in the doorway, his briefcase forgotten in his hand. His eyes swept the room, the roses, the candles, finally landing on her. She watched his face transform, saw the careful control crack like ice under spring sun. Ginny. Her name came out strangled, desperate. She walked toward him slowly, letting him see everything, the way the silk moved against her skin, the determination in her eyes, the love she'd kept caged for 3 long years. Happy anniversary, Brandon. The briefcase hit the floor with a thud. His hands clenched at his sides, and she could see the war raging behind his eyes, desire battling with whatever demon kept him from her. You did all this. His voice was rough, barely controlled. I wanted tonight to be special. She stopped, just out of reach, close enough to see his pupils dilate, to watch his chest rise and fall with quickened breaths. 3 years, Brandon. 3 years of sleeping beside you, of loving you, of being your wife in name only. He swallowed hard. Ginny, you don't understand. Then help me understand. She moved closer until she could feel the heat radiating from his body. What are you so afraid of? Why do you look at me like you're starving but refuse to eat? His control splintered. He reached for her, his hands hovering just above her shoulders, trembling with the effort of not touching. You have no idea what you do to me, no idea how many nights I've stood outside your door, listening to you breathe, fighting every instinct that screams at me to go to you. Then stop fighting. She lifted her hand to his face, but he caught her wrist gently. I can't. The words were torn from him. You're too precious to rush. The familiar phrase, the same one he'd used on their wedding night, ignited something within her. Frustration, hurt, and 3 years of rejection crystallized into determination. Stop. Her voice was sharp enough to cut. Stop treating me like some fragile doll. I'm your wife, Brandon. Your wife who has slept alone for 1,095 nights. Who has watched you disappear into yourself day by day, who has loved you through silence and distance and this careful choreography we do around each other. She yanked her wrist from his grip, anger making her bold. Do you know what I did today? I went to Victoria's Secret and bought lingerie. The saleswoman asked if it was for a special occasion, and I had to lie. I couldn't tell her it was for my 3rd anniversary, that my husband has never seen me in anything but sensible pajamas. I couldn't explain that I'm 28 years old and still... She broke off, tears threatening. Brandon's face contorted with pain. You think this is easy for me? You think I don't burn every time you're near me? That I don't die a little each morning when I wake up and force myself out of bed before I give in to what I want? Then give in. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. Please, Brandon, just once, give in. He moved so fast, she didn't have time to react. One moment he was standing rigid by the door, the next he had her face cradled in his hands, his forehead pressed to hers. My beautiful... brave. "Ginny," he whispered, "if you knew what I've done, what I'm capable of, you'd run from this room and never look back. Try me." For a heartbeat, she thought he would. His lips were so close to hers, his breath mingling with her own. His thumbs stroked her cheeks, wiping away her tears. The moment stretched, crystalline and perfect. Then his phone rang. The spell shattered. Brandon jerked back as if burned, fumbling for his phone. The caller ID made his face go white. "I have to take this." He was already moving toward the door. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Brandon, don't." But he was gone, his voice echoing from the hallway as he answered the call. She caught fragments. Understood. Keeping her safe. The timeline. Rage, white-hot and cleansing, burned through her despair. She followed him, not caring that she wore only silk and lace, not caring that her carefully planned seduction lay in ruins. She found him in his study, pacing like a caged animal, the phone pressed to his ear. "No, there's been no breach," he was saying. "I've maintained the boundaries. She doesn't know anything." "Doesn't know what?" Ginny demanded from the doorway. Brandon spun, his face a mask of shock and guilt. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, ending the call. "Who was that? What don't I know?" "Ginny, please, go back to the bedroom. Let me handle this." "Handle what?" She advanced into the room, her silk robe billowing behind her like wings. "I'm so tired of your secrets, Brandon. So tired of being protected from something I don't even understand." He ran his hands through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "It's complicated. Then uncomplicated. I can't." The words exploded from him. "Don't you understand? Everything I do, every distance I maintain, it's all to keep you safe. There are people who have already—" He cut himself off, jaw clenching. "Who have already what? Brandon, you're scaring me." "Good." His voice was flat, defeated. "You should be scared. You should have been scared from the beginning." A sound from the terrace made them both freeze. Brandon moved swiftly, pushing her behind him as he approached the French doors. In the reflection of the glass, she saw a shadow move. "Stay here," he ordered, his voice different now, hard, dangerous. "Brandon, I said stay here." He yanked open the door and disappeared into the darkness of the terrace. Ginny heard a scuffle, a grunt of pain, then silence. "Brandon?" Her voice was small, frightened. He reappeared, his suit jacket torn, a cut on his cheek. In his hand was a camera with a telephoto lens. "We need to leave," he said grimly. "Pack a bag, quickly." "What's happening? Who was that?" "Someone who shouldn't have been able to get past security." He was already moving, pulling a suitcase from the closet. "Someone who knows too much." "About what?" He paused, looking at her with such sorrow it took her breath away. "About how much I love you. About how close I came tonight to breaking every promise I've made." Promises to whom? But he was already on the phone again, barking orders to someone. About securing the perimeter and initiating Protocol 7. Ginny stood in the ruins of her romantic evening. Roses scattered, candles guttering, the silk nightgown that was supposed to change everything now, just another reminder of her failure. She watched her husband transform into someone she didn't recognize. Cold, efficient, dangerous. "Brandon," she said quietly, "whatever this is, whatever you're involved in, we're supposed to face it together. That's what marriage means." He stopped packing and looked at her, his green eyes dark with emotion. "No, Ginny. Marriage means protecting the person you love, even from yourself, especially from yourself." A sudden crash from the living room had them both spinning toward the door. Brandon pulled something from a hidden compartment in his desk, a gun. "Get dressed," he commanded. "We're leaving in 2 minutes." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't watch us." "Who's watching us?" He crossed to her in 3 strides, cupping her face with his free hand. For a moment his mask slipped, and she saw raw terror in his eyes. "Everyone," he whispered. "They're always watching, and tonight I almost gave them exactly what they've been waiting for." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Brandon's phone buzzed with incoming messages, each one making his expression grimmer. 1 minute, Ginny. Please. She ran to their closet, pulling on jeans and a sweater, her mind reeling. The romantic anniversary she'd planned had become something from a nightmare. Yet as she threw clothes into a bag, she felt a strange sense of relief. Finally, something was happening. The stasis of their marriage was breaking apart. She didn't know what secrets Brandon kept, what danger surrounded them, but at least the pretense was ending. When she emerged, Brandon was standing by the window, watching the street below. Red and blue lights flickered against his face. "Ready?" he asked without turning. "I've been ready for 3 years," she replied. He turned then, and for a moment his careful control cracked. He crossed to her, pressed his lips to her forehead in that familiar, safe gesture, but this time his hands shook where they gripped her shoulders. "I'm sorry," he whispered against her skin. "I'm so sorry for all of it. For the roses and the candles and the hope I've destroyed. For the wife I can't be a husband to. For the danger I've brought to your door. Brandon, no!" He pulled back, his walls slamming back into place. "No more tonight. We need to go." He led her through their penthouse, past the scattered rose petals that marked her failed seduction, past the life they'd built on distances and secrets. As they entered his private elevator, Ginny took one last look at their home. 3 years of marriage, and she still didn't know the man beside her. But tonight, for the first time, she'd seen behind his mask. Whatever secrets Brandon Wood kept, whatever danger stalked them, she would face it with him. The elevator doors closed on their old life. When they opened again, Ginny knew nothing would ever be the same. In the confined space, Brandon stood rigidly beside her, his hand hovering near the gun concealed beneath his jacket. But Ginny saw the way his other hand twitched toward her, the way his body angled protectively, even as he maintained that careful distance. "Happy anniversary," she said softly, bitterly. His reflection in the polished steel doors showed a man at war with himself. "Next year will be different," he said. "I promise. Don't make promises you can't keep. This one I will." His voice was fierce, determined. "1 more year, Ginny. Give me 1 more year and everything changes." The elevator descended into darkness, carrying them away from roses and candles and failed seductions toward a truth that would either destroy them or finally set them free. Chapter 3. The Storm's Truth. The rain started as Ginny left the Museum of Modern Art, gentle drops that quickly became a torrential downpour. She'd spent the afternoon trying to lose herself in abstract paintings, trying not to think about the disaster of their anniversary 2 weeks ago. Since that night, Brandon had been more distant than ever, leaving before she woke and returning after she slept. She'd forgotten her umbrella. Again. The story of her life lately. Always unprepared for the storms. By the time she reached the 5th Avenue entrance to their building, she was soaked through. Her white blouse clung to her skin, her hair hung in dripping tendrils, and her shoes squelched with each step. The doorman, Robert, rushed to help her. "Mrs. Wood, let me get you a towel." "I'm fine, Robert, thank you." She managed a smile despite her chattering teeth. "Is my husband home?" "Mr. Wood arrived an hour ago, ma'am. He seemed preoccupied." Preoccupied, that was one word for it. The private elevator to their penthouse had never seemed longer. She watched her reflection in the polished doors, a drowned rat of a woman nothing like the polished socialite Brandon Wood's wife was supposed to be. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe if she were more like the women in his world, cool, controlled, untouchable, he could love her properly. The thought made her laugh, a sound bitter enough to startle herself. The elevator opened directly into their foyer. She kicked off her ruined shoes, leaving wet footprints on the marble as she headed for their bedroom. Thunder crashed outside, close enough to rattle the windows. The lights flickered once, twice, then held. She was peeling off her soaked blouse when the bedroom door opened. Brandon stood in the doorway, still in his suit from whatever meeting had consumed his day. His eyes widened as he took in her state, standing there in her wet skirt and ruined silk camisole, water still dripping from her hair. For a moment neither moved. Lightning flashed, illuminating his face in stark relief. She saw something raw there, something hungry, before his usual mask slammed down. "You're soaked." His voice was carefully neutral. "It's raining." She turned away, reaching for a towel. "From the bathroom. I forgot my umbrella." "You're shivering." She laughed, but it came out wrong, too sharp, too close to tears. "Am I? I hadn't noticed. I've gotten used to being cold." The words hung between them, loaded with meaning. She heard him step into the room, heard the door close softly behind him. "Ginny, don't." She wrapped the towel around herself, suddenly, exhausted. "Whatever careful, measured thing you're about to say, just don't. I can't take any more distance, Brandon. I can't take any more." Thunder crashed, drowning her words. The lights flickered again, and then the power went out completely, plunging them into darkness. In the sudden blackness, she heard Brandon curse softly. Then his hands were on her shoulders, warm through the damp towel. "Are you all right?" She almost laughed at the question. Was she all right? She was standing in the dark with a husband who wouldn't touch her, who kept secrets that required bodyguards, and midnight escapes, who looked at her like she was everything, but treated her like glass. "No," she said simply. "I'm not all right. I haven't been all right for 3 years." His hands tightened on her shoulders. In the darkness, without the distraction of his carefully controlled expression, she could feel his tension, hear the ragged edge to his breathing. "I need to feel like your wife, Brandon. Not your roommate, not your ward, not some precious object you're protecting. Your wife." Lightning illuminated his face, revealing an emotion she couldn't name. When thunder followed, he pulled her against him, his arms encircling her as if the storm might tear her away. It was the first time he'd held her, really held her, since their wedding night. "I don't want to hurt you with my past," he said into her hair, his voice breaking. "There are things you don't know, things that would—" His words were cut off by a sound that didn't belong to the storm. Footsteps in the hallway outside their bedroom. Brandon went rigid. In one fluid motion he pushed her behind him, his body a shield between her and the door. "Stay behind me," he whispered, his voice different now, cold, dangerous. "Brandon, what?" "Quiet." The doorknob turned slowly. In the darkness, she could barely make out Brandon reaching for something, a weapon, from his jacket. The door burst open. Lightning flashed at that exact moment, revealing a figure in black, face obscured by a ski mask. Brandon moved faster than she'd ever seen anyone move, intercepting the intruder before he'd taken 2 steps into the room. The fight was brutal and quick. She heard the crack of fists against flesh, a grunt of pain, the crash of a lamp falling. Thunder masked most of the sounds, but she saw enough in the intermittent lightning flashes. Brandon moving with lethal precision, the intruder desperately trying to escape. It ended with the intruder on the floor, Brandon's knee on his back, a gun pressed to his head. "Who sent you?" Brandon's voice was ice. The man mumbled something through the mask. Brandon ripped it off, revealing a face she didn't recognize, young, scared, bleeding from a split lip. "Please," the man gasped. "I was just supposed to take pictures, document any intimacy. That's all." "Who hired you?" "I don't know. It was all done through encrypted messages. They said you'd broken the rules, that they needed proof." "Get out!" Brandon hauled the man to his feet. "Tell whoever sent you that the rules remain intact. There's nothing to document." He shoved the intruder toward the door. The man stumbled, caught himself and ran. Brandon stood in the doorway for a moment, his shoulders rigid with tension. When he turned back to her, his face was a mask of fury and pain. "Pack a bag," he said. "We're leaving." "No." The word surprised them both. Ginny stepped forward, the towel still clutched around her, her wet hair dripping onto her shoulders. "I'm not running anymore, Brandon. I'm not leaving until you tell me what's going on." "Ginny, who are you?" The question burst from her. "The man I married couldn't fight like that. The man I married was gentle, kind. Who are you, really?" Lightning illuminated his face again, and what she saw there broke her heart. He looked lost, haunted, like a man drowning in secrets. "I'm exactly who you married," he said quietly. "A man trying to protect the woman he loves from the consequences of his past." What past? What consequences? He crossed to the window, staring out at the storm-lashed city. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with exhaustion. 5 years ago, I was engaged to someone else, Elena Vega. She was beautiful, vivacious, everything a man could want. We were happy, or I thought we were, until the night she died. Ginny's. A breath caught. She moved closer, careful not to touch him, sensing how fragile this moment was. "She was murdered," Brandon continued, "made to look like an accident, a car crash on a winding road. But I knew better. She'd been receiving threats, warnings to stay away from me. I thought I could protect her. I was wrong. Who killed her? A man named Victor Strand, my business rival, though that word doesn't begin to cover what he is. He wanted something, had a technology patent worth billions. When I wouldn't sell, he decided to take everything from me instead." "But why?" "He framed me for her death." Brandon's voice was flat, emotionless. "Not legally. There wasn't enough evidence for that. But in the court of public opinion, I was guilty. The bereaved fiancé who might have wanted his lover dead. My company's stock plummeted. Investors fled. I was weeks from losing everything." Thunder rumbled, more distant now. The storm was passing, but the one in their bedroom was just beginning. "That's when Strand came to me with an offer," Brandon said. "A contract, 5 years of penance. If I remained celibate, if I didn't consummate any marriage or relationship for 5 years, he would restore my reputation, return my company's value, and most importantly, leave any woman I loved alone." Ginny felt the blood drain from her face. "You signed it? What choice did I have?" He turned from the window, his eyes blazing. He'd already killed one woman I loved. He made it clear he'd do it again. "So yes, I signed. I agreed to 5 years of hell to keep you safe. But you married me anyway. I tried to stay away." His voice broke. "God, Ginny, I tried. But you are everything. Your light, your warmth, your stubborn refusal to let me disappear into the darkness. I thought I could have you in my life without truly having you. I thought I could be near you without touching you. I was a fool." "How much longer?" she whispered. 11 months. "We have 11 more months until the contract expires." She moved toward him, her bare feet silent on the thick carpet. And then I'm free. We're free. I can finally be the husband you deserve. And if you break the contract before then?" His face darkened. "He's made it clear what will happen. You'll die just like Elena, except this time he'll make sure I watch." The lights flickered back on suddenly, harsh after the intimate darkness. Ginny saw herself in the mirror, still damp, still wrapped in a towel, facing a man who'd just shattered every assumption she'd had about their marriage. "So all of this," she gestured between them, "the distance, the rejection, the careful way you avoid my touch, it's all to protect me?" "Everything I do is to protect you." He stepped closer, his hands clenched at his sides. "Do you understand now why I couldn't tell you? Why I have to keep you at arm's length? It's not that I don't want you, Ginny. It's that I want you so much. It's killing me, but I can't risk your life for my selfish desires." She studied his face, seeing him truly for the first time. The shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way his whole body angled toward her, even as he held himself back. 11 months, she repeated. 11 months. And then, a smile ghosted across his lips, the first genuine one she'd seen in weeks. And then I'm going to make up for every single day of these 3 years. I'm going to worship you, Ginny. I'm going to show you exactly how much I've wanted you, needed you, loved you from afar. Promise? He lifted his hand, hesitating just inches from her face. She could feel the warmth radiating from his palm, could see the tremor in his fingers. I promise, he whispered. 11 more months, and you'll never doubt again that you're my wife in every way. The towel slipped slightly and his eyes darkened. For a moment the air between them crackled with tension. Then he stepped back, the familiar walls slamming back into place. You should get dressed, he said. You'll catch cold. But something had changed. The truth was out now, ugly and dangerous as it was. She understood the bars of their beautiful cage, knew the name of their jailer. As she moved toward the closet, she paused. Brandon? Yes. 11 months is a long time, but it's not forever. I can wait, now that I know what we're waiting for. His smile was worth all the lonely nights, all the rejected advances, all the tears she'd cried into her pillow. I love you, he said simply, more than my life, more than my freedom, more than anything. Remember that when the waiting gets hard. She nodded, not trusting her voice. As she disappeared into the closet, she heard him on the phone, arranging increased security, changing protocols. The storm outside had passed, but she knew worse ones were coming. Victor Strand was out there, watching, waiting for Brandon to slip. One touch, one kiss, one moment of weakness, and she'd pay the price. But she also knew something else now. Brandon would loved her, truly, desperately, completely, and for that love she could wait 11 more months. After all, what was 11 months compared to a lifetime? The lights flickered one more time, and in that brief darkness, she allowed herself to imagine what came after. Brandon's hands on her skin, his lips on hers, their bodies finally meeting after years of separation. Soon, she promised herself. Soon. But first, they had to survive whatever Victor Strand had planned next. Because something told her he wouldn't. Wait quietly for his contract to expire. The game had changed tonight. The secrets were out, and the most dangerous time in any story is when the villain realizes he's losing control. Chapter 4: Hidden Enemies. The library on East 78th Street had always been Ginny's sanctuary. Tucked between towering brownstones, it was a forgotten gem where she could disappear among dusty books and whispered stories. But today, she wasn't here to read. 3 days had passed since Brandon's revelation about Victor Strand and the contract that imprisoned their marriage. 3 days of processing the truth, of understanding that every rejection had been an act of love, every distance a desperate protection. Now she needed answers Brandon wouldn't give. She found the newspaper archives in the basement, years of microfilm, waiting to tell their secrets. The librarian, Mrs. Henley, barely looked up as Ginny settled at the ancient machine. 5 years ago, she whispered to herself, threading the film. Elena Vega. The story unfolded in stark headlines. Socialite dies in suspicious crash. Millionaire's fiancé dead at 28. Questions surround heiress's death. The photos made her stomach clench. Elena Vega had been stunning, raven hair, olive skin, eyes that sparkled with life even in newsprint. In every picture, Brandon stood beside her, his arm around her waist, his face younger but already carrying shadows. They looked perfect together. Natural, the way a couple should look when they're allowed to touch. Terrible tragedy. Ginny jumped. Mrs. Henley stood behind her, peering at the screen through thick glasses. You knew about this? Ginny asked. Everyone knew. It was the scandal of the year. That poor girl, dying just weeks before her wedding. And Mr. Wood never quite recovering from the suspicion. Suspicion. Mrs. Henley lowered her voice conspiratorially. There were rumors he'd been unfaithful, that she'd discovered something about his past. The police cleared him, of course, but society has its own verdicts. Ginny scrolled through more articles, her heart sinking. The media had painted Brandon as a man with secrets, a potential killer who'd escaped justice through wealth and connections. No wonder he'd been desperate enough to sign Strand's contract. The Vega family still visits her grave, Mrs. Henley continued. Every month, regular as clockwork. Riverside Cemetery, Section 12. Such devotion. After the librarian drifted away, Ginny sat in the dim basement staring at Elena's face. This woman had loved Brandon, had died because of it. The weight of that truth pressed down on her. She printed several articles, folding them carefully into her purse. As she left the library, she made a decision that would have horrified Brandon. She was going to Riverside Cemetery. The taxi ride seemed endless, winding through Manhattan traffic toward the Bronx. The driver chatted about the weather, the Yankees, anything to fill the silence, but Ginny barely heard him. Her mind was spinning with questions, with the need to understand the woman whose death had shaped her marriage. Riverside Cemetery sprawled across acres of manicured grounds, marble angels standing sentinel over the dead. She found Section 12, easily, a newer part of the cemetery where the headstones were still sharp-edged, not yet softened by time. Elena Maria Vega, beloved daughter and sister, 1986-2019. Love is stronger than death. Fresh flowers lay on the grave, white roses exactly, like the ones Ginny had scattered on their anniversary. The coincidence made her shiver. She knelt on the damp grass, not caring about her designer dress. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the stone. "I'm sorry he loved you first. I'm sorry you died because of it. I'm sorry I'm here, living the life you should have had." She would have hated that. Ginny's head snapped up. A woman stood nearby, elegant in black despite the spring weather. She had Eleanor's dark hair, the same aristocratic features. "The apology," the woman continued. "Elena hated when people apologized for things beyond their control. You're her sister," Ginny said, rising unsteadily. "Catherine Vega." No hand was offered. "And you're the replacement." The words stung, but Ginny refused to flinch. "I'm Brandon's wife. In name only, from what I hear." Catherine's smile was sharp as winter. "Tell me, Mrs. Wood, does it bother you that he visits her grave every month? That he kneels where you're standing and weeps for the woman he truly loved? He loves me too, does he? Or are you just a placeholder, someone to wait with until his penance is complete?" Ginny felt tears threatening but held them back. "Why are you here? I come when I need to remember." Catherine stepped closer, her perfume heavy with gardenias. "Remember what your husband took from my family. Remember that Elena called me the night she died, terrified. He's not who I thought." "He was," she said. "There are things about Brandon, dark things." "That's not true." "Isn't it? Then why did she die on a clear night, on a road she'd driven 1,000 times? Why was she running from the man she was supposed to marry?" "Because of Victor Strand." The name burst from Ginny before she could stop it. Catherine's face changed, all colour draining away. "How do you know that name?" "Brandon told me, about the contract, about everything." "Impossible! If he'd broken his silence—" Catherine cut herself off, eyes widening in realization. "Unless the contract is almost up, unless he's preparing you for what comes next." "What do you mean?" But Catherine was already backing away. "Stay away from my sister's grave, Mrs. Wood. And if you're smart, stay away from your husband too. The contract protected you, but when it ends—" She shuddered. "God help you when it ends." She turned and walked quickly toward a waiting car, leaving Ginny alone with the dead. The sun was setting as Ginny stood there, trying to process Catherine's words. Brandon visited this grave monthly. He knelt here and cried for Elena. The thought hurt more than she'd expected. As she turned to leave, she noticed movement in the trees, a figure watching her. Fear spiked through her as she remembered the intruder in their bedroom, the photographer Brandon had caught. She walked quickly toward the cemetery entrance, her heels clicking on the paved path. The figure followed, always staying just out of clear sight. Her heart hammered as she reached the gates, practically running now. A hand grabbed her arm. She screamed, spinning around to find Brandon, his face a mask of fury and fear. "What are you doing here?" His grip was gentle but unbreakable. "Research." She lifted her chin defiantly. "The kind you won't do with me." His eyes flicked to Elena's grave, visible in the distance. Pain flashed across his features. "You shouldn't have come here." "Why?" "Because I might learn the truth. Because Strand has people watching this place. Because coming here puts a target on your back. Because—" He broke off, pulling her toward his car. "We'll discuss this at home." The ride back to Manhattan was silent, tension crackling between them. Ginny stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. When they finally reached their building, Brandon dismissed his driver with a curt nod. In the elevator, he stood rigidly beside her, jaw clenched. The moment their penthouse door closed behind them, his control snapped. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" He paced the living room like a caged animal. "Strand has people everywhere. The cemetery, the newspaper archives, the courthouse. They report everything." "I met Catherine." He froze. "Elena's sister. She said you visit the grave every month, that you cry for her." Brandon sank onto the couch, suddenly looking exhausted. Yes, the simple admission hurt more than denial would have. Ginny felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "Do you still love her?" He looked up, his green eyes tortured. "I love the memory of what we had. I mourn the life she lost because of me. But Ginny—" He stood, crossing to her, stopping just out of reach as always. "You are my heart, my soul, my reason for surviving these 3 years of hell. Catherine said the contract ending won't free us. She said it would make things worse. Catherine doesn't know everything. Then tell me what she doesn't know. Tell me why you really visit that grave." He turned away, staring out at the glittering skyline. "I go there to remind myself why I can't touch you. Every month I kneel at her grave and remember what my love cost her. It keeps me strong when all I want is to pull you into my arms and damn the consequences. And when the contract ends, I'll have proof that Strand killed Elena. Evidence I've been gathering for 5 years. He thinks he's been watching me, but I've been watching him too." Ginny moved closer, careful not to touch. "What kind of evidence?" "The kind that will destroy him. The kind that will finally free us both. And if he strikes first—" Brandon's smile was cold, dangerous. "Then he'll learn that 5 years of enforced celibacy have taught me patience. And patience, my love, is the deadliest weapon of all." Thunder rumbled outside, another storm approaching. Ginny thought of Catherine's warning, of the fear in her eyes when she'd heard Strand's name. "She's terrified of him," Ginny said. "Catherine, she knows something. The Vega family has their own contract with Strand, their own secrets. Catherine's fear keeps her in line, keeps her from asking too many questions about her sister's death. My God, how many lives has he destroyed? Too many. But it ends with us, Ginny. One way or another, we'll finish this." She studied his face, seeing new lines carved by years of this burden. "You should have told me from the beginning. And risk you doing exactly what you did today? Risk you investigating, asking questions, drawing his attention?" He shook his head. "My silence was the only thing keeping you invisible to him. I'm not invisible anymore, am I?" "No." The word was heavy with implication. "After tonight, after your visit to Elena's grave, you're very much on his radar." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Maybe it's time. Maybe hiding you was never going to work forever." He moved to his desk, pulling out a locked drawer. If you're going to be visible, you need to be protected. He held out a small gun, sleek and silver. Brandon, I don't learn. Tomorrow you start training. If Strand wants to escalate, we'll be ready. She took the weapon, surprised by its weight. What about the contract? Won't fighting back break the terms? The contract specifies physical intimacy. It says nothing about teaching my wife to defend herself. For the first time in days, Ginny felt hope. They were done being passive victims, done waiting for Strand to dictate their lives. 11 months, she said. 11 months, he agreed. But now we use them to prepare. When the contract ends, when I'm finally free to be your husband completely, we'll also be free of Victor Strand. Permanently. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating his face. He looked different. Harder, more dangerous, but also more alive than she'd ever seen him. What changed? She asked. Why tell me now? Why let me in? Because you went to her grave, because you sought answers despite the danger, because you've proven you're not just my wife to protect, but my partner to fight alongside. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face in that familiar gesture, but this time there was promise in it, promise of what would come. When the waiting ended, 11 months, he whispered, and then I'll never let you go again. Thunder crashed, the storm breaking over Manhattan. But inside their penthouse, Ginny felt safer than she had in years. The enemy had a name now, the prison had a timeline. And she was no longer fighting alone. Tomorrow, she would learn to shoot. Next week, she'd learn to fight. And in 11 months, when Brandon could finally touch her without fear, they would face Victor Strand together. The grave visit had changed everything. In seeking the past, she'd found their future. Dangerous, uncertain, but finally, truly, theirs to share. Chapter 5. Paradise and Peril. The Caribbean stretched before them like a jewel-toned dream. Turquoise waters lapping at white sand beaches, palm trees swaying in the warm breeze. Ginny stood on the private balcony of their St. Lucia villa, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of coral and gold. Surprised? Brandon's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him in the doorway, casual in linen pants and a white shirt open at the collar. The tropical setting had softened him somehow, made him seem younger, less burdened. You hate beaches, she said. You burn in the sun. You despise sand in your shoes. All true. He joined her at the railing, careful to maintain that familiar distance. But you love them, and after everything, I thought we both needed to escape. It had been 2 weeks since her visit to Elena's grave, 2 weeks of self-defense lessons and target practice, of learning to see shadows where she'd once seen only light. The surprise trip had come, just when she'd felt the walls closing in. How long are we staying? A week, maybe more. He gestured toward the beach below. The villa is completely private. No neighbors, no tourists, just us. The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility and restriction. Just us, but still with the invisible barrier between them. And security? She'd learned to ask now, to think like prey. Discreet, but thorough. The island has been swept. We're safe here. Safe. The word had taken on new meaning. Safe from Strand, from photographers, from mysterious watchers. But not safe from the growing tension between them, the weight of desire that seemed heavier in this tropical paradise. Dinner was served on the terrace, fresh caught fish, tropical fruits, wine that tasted of sunshine. They talked of small things, normal things, as if they were any other couple on a romantic getaway. But awareness hummed between them, electric in the humid air. "Dance with me," Brandon said suddenly, standing and extending his hand. There was no music, just the sound of waves and night birds. Ginny took his hand, letting him pull her up. They swayed together under the stars, her head on his chest, his arms around her waist. "I used to dream about this," she murmured, "being somewhere beautiful with you, somewhere we could just be." His arms tightened. "What else did you dream?" Dangerous questions, Mr. Wood. Indulge me. She lifted her head, meeting his gaze. In the moonlight, his eyes were dark, intense. I dreamed of swimming with you in water this blue, of sleeping beside you with windows open to the ocean, of waking up tangled together, sandy and sun-kissed and completely, utterly yours. His breathing had changed, become shallow. His hands splayed across her back, pulling her infinitesimally closer. Ginny. I know. She laid her head back on his chest. I know we can't, not yet. But in my dreams, we could. They danced until her feet ached, until the moon hung high and bright. When they finally parted, she glimpsed the struggle in his face, the battle between desire and duty, between what he craved and what he'd promised. That night she lay in the massive bed alone, listening to the ocean, imagining different realities. Ones where Brandon could join her, where the silk nightgown she wore could be for him instead of just for hope. The next days fell into a rhythm. Mornings by the pool, Brandon working on his laptop while she read. Afternoons exploring the island, hidden coves, local markets, winding mountain roads with breathtaking views. Evenings on the beach, walking just close enough to almost touch. On their third night, tropical rain drummed against the windows. They sat in the living room, sharing a bottle of wine, the atmosphere lazy and intimate. Ginny had changed into a sundress after dinner, the thin fabric clinging in the humidity. Tell me about before, she said, curling her legs under her on the sofa. Before Elena, before all of this, what were you like? Brandon smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. Reckless, impulsive. I dated too much, worked too little. Classic rich boy cliché. I can't imagine you reckless. Elena couldn't. Either at first, she was the one who made me want to be better, to be worthy of someone. His expression darkened. And look how that turned out. Ginny set down her wine, moving closer on the couch. You are worthy. What happened to her wasn't your fault, wasn't it? If I hadn't loved her, if Strand hadn't seen her as leverage— Stop! She reached for his hand, then caught herself. The constant self-censorship was exhausting. You can't blame yourself for a madman's actions. Can't I? The rain intensified, thunder rolling across the water. In the flashes of lightning, she saw his face raw with guilt. Come here, she said softly. Ginny, just sit with me, please. He moved closer and she curled against his side, her head on his shoulder. They sat like that, listening to the storm, existing in the strange space between intimacy and distance. Sometimes I forget, she whispered. Forget why we can't touch. It feels so natural being near you. His arm came around her shoulders. I know. Do you think about it, what it will be like when every moment— his voice was rough— every single moment of every day? She turned in his arms, looking up at him. They were so close she could see the gold flecks in his green eyes, could count his eyelashes. The air between them crackled with suppressed desire. Ginny. Her name was a warning and a plea. She shifted, moving to straddle his lap in one fluid motion. His hands came up automatically, gripping her waist, and they both froze at the contact. Make me yours tonight, she whispered, echoing words she'd said before. But this time, in this tropical paradise with rain pounding the windows and no one. To see, the words felt heavier, more possible. His hands tightened on her waist. She could feel him trembling, could see the battle raging in his eyes. For a moment, one heart-stopping moment, she thought he would give in. Then his phone buzzed, the spell shattered. Brandon's face went white as he read the message. His hands fell away from her, and she scrambled off his lap, her skin burning. Where he'd touched her. What is it? He showed her the screen. A single line of text from an unknown number. Remember the contract or she pays. He knows we're here. Brandon was already moving, checking windows, drawing curtains. Somehow he knows. How? You said we were safe. I thought we were. He pulled something from his luggage, the gun she'd been learning to use. Stay away from the windows. But Ginny was tired of hiding, tired of fear. She stood, crossing to the French doors that led to the balcony. No. Ginny, don't! She threw open the doors, stepping out into the rain. It soaked her instantly, the thin sundress clinging to her skin. She spread her arms wide, challenging the darkness. "Are you watching?" she called to the night. "Is this what you want to see? A woman alone because you're too twisted to let her love her husband." Brandon was beside her in an instant, pulling her back inside. "Are you insane?" "Maybe." She was crying now, tears mixing with rain. "Maybe I am insane. 3 years of this, Brandon. 3 years of being watched, measured, judged by a ghost. I'm so tired of being afraid." He cupped her face in his hands, and for once, neither of them pulled back from the contact. "Listen to me. Strand wants us to break. He's waiting for any excuse to invoke the penalty clause. 1 kiss, 1 night of weakness, and he wins." "What's the penalty clause?" Brandon's hands dropped. He turned away, and she saw his shoulders hunch. "Brandon, what happens if we break the contract? You don't want to know? Tell me." He faced her again, his expression bleak. "If I'm physically intimate with you before the contract expires, ownership of everything I have transfers to him, the company, the properties, the accounts, everything. So we'd be poor. So what? You don't understand. It's not about money. It's about power. With my resources, he could destroy countless lives. And the contract, it gives him rights to you as well." Ice formed in Ginny's stomach. "What kind of rights?" "The kind that would make death seem merciful." She sank onto the sofa, finally understanding the true horror of what Brandon had signed. It wasn't just about keeping them apart. It was about punishment, control, ownership. 9 more months, she whispered. 9 months. He knelt in front of her, close but not touching. "I will get us through this. I swear to you, when this is over, when we're free, you'll worship every inch of me." She managed a weak smile. "You've mentioned that, and I meant it, every word. When I can finally touch you without fear, love you without consequences." His voice broke. "God, Ginny, the things I want to do to you, the way I want to love you, it's worth waiting for. You're worth waiting for." The storm outside was passing, thunder fading to distant mumbles. Ginny reached out, her fingers stopping just short of his face. "Show me," she said. "Not with touch, but show me how you'll love me when you can." His eyes darkened. Slowly, deliberately, he mirrored her gesture, his hand hovering beside her. Face, tracing the air around her features. "I'll start here," he murmured, his finger following the line of her jaw without contact. "Kiss you until you can't breathe. Then here." The invisible path moved to her throat. "Learn every place that makes you sigh." Her breath hitched as his hands mapped her body through empty air, always maintaining that fraction of distance. It was torture and promise combined, showing her exactly what awaited while denying them both. "I'll take hours," he continued, his voice hypnotic. "Days, memorizing you, worshipping you, making up for every moment of these lost years. Brandon. And when I finally make you mine, truly mine, it won't be gentle. Not the first time. I'll be too desperate, too hungry. 3 years of wanting you will explode, and I'm afraid I'll devour you whole." Heat pooled low in her belly despite the absence of touch. This was a Brandon she'd never seen, raw, hungry, dangerous in his desire. A sound from outside broke the moment. Brandon was on his feet instantly, weapon in hand, but it was just a branch falling, knocked loose by the storm. They stood there, in the aftermath, both breathing hard, the air between them charged with unspent passion. "We should sleep," Brandon said finally. "Separate rooms, as always." "As always," she agreed, though everything in her rebelled against it. At her bedroom door, she paused. "The message. Do you think he's actually here, on the island?" "No, he has people everywhere, But he's not stupid enough to come himself. Brandon's smile was grim. He prefers to watch from a distance, like a spider in his web. 9 months, she said again like a mantra. 9 months, and then the spider burns. That night Ginny dreamed of fire, of webs turning to ash, of freedom rising from flames. When she woke to tropical sunshine, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean. But the message had been clear. Even in paradise, they weren't alone. Victor Strand's reach extended everywhere, his eyes always watching, waiting for them to slip. At breakfast, Brandon seemed different, harder, more determined. "We're leaving today," he announced, "but we just got here." "Exactly. He expected us to stay a week. We'll disappoint him." His smile was sharp. "Time to change the game." As they packed, as the private jet prepared for departure, Ginny felt something. Shift. They were done running, done hiding. The countdown had begun. 9 months until freedom. But she sensed something else too. Brandon had plans he wasn't sharing, moves in a game she barely understood. The paradise vacation had become something else, a declaration of war. And in war, Ginny was learning, the first casualty was always innocence. Looking back at the island, as their plane lifted off, she said goodbye to more than a tropical escape. She said goodbye to the woman who'd believed love could be simple, who'd thought patience was all they needed. 9 months stretched ahead, 9 months of danger, of uncareful distances of love held in check by legal chains, but also 9 months of preparation, of learning to fight, of becoming someone Victor Strand wouldn't see coming. The hunter was about to become the hunted. And when the contract finally expired, when Brandon could touch her at last, they would be ready for whatever hell Strand unleashed. Paradise was behind them now. Ahead lay something darker, more dangerous, but also perhaps more real. Chapter 6. Birthday Revelations. The Manhattan skyline glittered like scattered diamonds against the April night. Ginny stood in their penthouse kitchen, checking the roast one final time, her hands trembling with anticipation. Tonight was Brandon's 35th birthday, and she'd spent weeks planning every detail. The table on their private terrace was set for 2, crystal glasses catching the glow of dozens of candles, white roses. She'd finally reclaimed them from that disastrous anniversary, arranged in low clusters. The spring air was warm enough to dine outside, and she'd strung fairy lights overhead, creating an intimate constellation just for them. She'd chosen her dress carefully, deep blue silk that matched his favorite tie, the one he'd worn to the charity gala where they'd first danced. Her hair was swept up, leaving her neck bare except for the diamond necklace he'd given her on their first anniversary. She wore the perfume he'd bought her in Paris during their honeymoon, the trip where he'd held her hand through the Louvre but never kissed her among the lovers at the Seine. The elevator chimed. Her heart jumped. Brandon entered, still in his office clothes, but looking tired. The past months since St. Lucia had been intense. Self-defense training, quiet investigations, the constant weight of Strand's surveillance. But tonight, she was determined to give him peace. "Happy birthday," she said softly. He stopped in the doorway, taking in her appearance. That familiar hunger flashed in his eyes before he controlled it. "You look extraordinary. Dinner's ready, unless you'd like to change first. Give me 5 minutes." He disappeared into their bedroom, and she put the finishing touches on their meal. When he returned, her breath caught. He'd changed into dark pants and a white shirt, sleeves rolled up, collar open. He looked devastatingly handsome and achingly touchable. "Shall we?" She gestured toward the terrace. Outside, the city sprawled beneath them, but their little world of lights created an intimate bubble. Brandon's eyes widened as he took in the scene. "Ginny, this is beautiful. You deserve beautiful things." She poured the wine, a Bordeaux from his birth year she'd been saving. To you, to surviving another year of this impossible life we're living. Their glasses clinked, the sound crystalline in the night air. Dinner was perfect, his favorite. Foods, easy conversation that avoided the dark topics that usually consumed them. She told him about her volunteer work at the children's hospital. He shared funny stories about his employees. For an hour, they were just a couple celebrating a birthday. When the plates were cleared, she stood, extending her hand. Dance with. Midi. Music drifted from hidden speakers. The song from that charity gala, the first time they danced. He rose, taking her hand, and pulled her into his arms. They swayed together under their private stars, her head on his chest, his arms around her waist. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong, could smell his cologne mixing with the night air. "Do you remember that gala?" she murmured. "You asked me to dance, and I thought my heart would explode. I'd been watching you all evening, this mysterious man who seemed so untouchable." Untouchable. His voice was rueful. "If you only knew how many times I'd walked past your table, trying to find courage to approach you. You were nervous? Terrified. You were so beautiful, so bright. I knew the moment I saw you that my life was about to change." She lifted her head, meeting his gaze. "Did you know then? What would happen?" "No. I thought I was free. Elena had been gone for 2 years. I thought I'd paid my penance." His arms tightened around her. "I didn't know Strand was still watching, still waiting. If you had known, would you still have asked me to dance? Nothing could have kept me from you. Not even him." The music changed to something slower, more intimate. Ginny pressed closer, feeling the solid warmth of him against her. 3 years of marriage, and these clothed embraces were all they had. "Brandon, I love you." The words hung in the air between them. She'd said them before, of course, but tonight they felt heavier, more desperate. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheek. "Ginny!" She turned her face into his palm, pressing her lips to his skin. She felt him shudder, felt his control waver. "There's something I haven't told you." His voice was rough, urgent. "The reason I haven't touched you, it's not just the contract." She pulled back slightly, still in his arms but able to see his face. "What do you mean? The surveillance, the watchers. They're not just Strand's people anymore." Before she could ask what he meant, the terrace doors burst open. Men in black tactical gear swarmed in. 6, 8, 10 of them. Brandon shoved Ginny behind him, but they were surrounded in seconds. "Brandon Wood." The lead operative's voice was mechanical through his mask. "You've violated the terms of your contract." "That's impossible." Brandon's voice was ice. "We haven't." "Surveillance. Footage shows intimate contact exceeding prescribed parameters." The man held up a tablet showing grainy footage of their dance moments before, zoomed in on her lips against his palm. Physical contact of an intimate nature. Clause 7, subsection 3. That's insane. It was innocent. "Our employer disagrees. You have forfeited all rights and protections under the contract. Ms. Morris is now forfeit as well." Brandon moved so fast, Ginny barely saw it. He grabbed a knife from the table, slashing at the nearest operative. But there were too many. They swarmed him, professional and efficient. "Run!" he shouted to Ginny, even as they forced him to his knees. But she couldn't run, couldn't leave him. She grabbed a wine bottle, smashing it against the table to create a weapon. "Stop, or we use force," the leader warned. "Go to hell!" She lunged, but they were ready. Something pricked her neck, a dart. The world tilted, colors blurring. "Ginny!" Brandon was fighting like a man possessed, throwing off 2 operatives before 3 more piled on. Blood streamed from a cut above his eye. As consciousness faded, she heard the leader speaking into his radio. "Subject secured. Initiating extraction protocol. Mr. Strand's instructions are clear. The woman goes to the island facility." The man... A pause. The man watches. The last thing she saw was Brandon's face, twisted with rage and anguish as they dragged her away. His voice followed her into darkness. "I'll find you, Ginny! I swear I'll find you!" Then nothing. She woke to the sound of waves. Her head pounded, her mouth tasted of copper, and every muscle ached. Slowly, she opened her eyes. She was in a white room, pristine, clinical, like an expensive hospital. Through barred windows she could see oceans stretching endlessly. An IV dripped into her arm, and she wore a white hospital gown instead of her blue silk dress. Her wedding rings were gone. Awake at last. She turned toward the voice. A man sat in the corner, elderly, distinguished, with silver hair and cold grey eyes. He wore an impeccable suit and held a cup of tea, as if this were a social call. "Victor Strand," she whispered. "Indeed. Welcome to my private facility, Mrs. Wood. Or should I say, Ms. Morris? Your marriage is, after all, invalidated by your husband's breach of contract." "Where's Brandon?" "Safe, for now." Strand rose, approaching her bed. "He's watching, of course. Cameras in every room. He'll see everything that happens to you here. You're sick. I'm a businessman. Your husband signed a contract. He broke it." Strand's smile was reptilian. "Now I collect what's owed. A kiss on the palm? That's your definition of breach? Any intimate contact." The terms were quite clear. He set down his tea, studying her. With scientific detachment. "You're prettier than Elena was. Softer. She was all fire and defiance. You have a gentleness that must drive him mad with wanting." Nausea rolled through her. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. To destroy Brandon Wood completely, to take everything he values." His eyes roamed over her, clinical but somehow worse than desire. "Starting with you. He'll come for me. I'm counting on it. Every attempt he makes will be broadcast back to him. Every failure, until he learns the price of breaking promises to me." He moved to the door, pausing at the threshold. "Rest now. Tomorrow, your education begins. By the time I'm done, you'll beg me to let you go. And Brandon will watch every moment. Powerless to stop it." The door closed with a soft click. Electronic locks engaged. Ginny lay in the pristine bed, her mind racing. Brandon was watching. The thought should terrify her. What horrors would he witness? But instead, it gave her strength. He would come for her. And until then, she would survive. She touched her lips to her palm, just as she had to his mere hours. A go. Such a simple gesture to warrant such consequences. But then she was learning that in their twisted world, even the smallest touch could shatter everything. Somewhere, Brandon was watching. Somewhere he was planning. And somewhere in this sterile prison, Victor Strand was about to learn that gentle didn't mean weak. The birthday dinner seemed a lifetime ago. The fairy lights, the roses, the dance under stars. All of it erased by men in masks and a contract written in cruelty. But love was stronger than contracts, stronger than surveillance, stronger than whatever hell Strand had planned. She just had to survive long enough to prove it. The waves continued their endless rhythm against unseen shores. And in a white room on a private island, Ginny Morris Wood began planning her own war. Because if Brandon had taught her anything in their 3 years of careful distances, it was patience, and patience, she was learning, could be its own kind of weapon. The game had changed. The rules had shifted. But the ending, their ending, that was still being written, and she intended to make it count. Chapter 7. The Contract. The injection burned. Ginny woke, gasping, her arm on fire where the needle had pierced her skin. The white room swam into focus, her prison for the past week, though time had become elastic in this place of endless fluorescent light and crashing waves. "Good morning, Miss Morris." She didn't flinch any more at Strand's voice. He visited daily, always immaculate, always coldly polite. Today he carried a leather folder and that same cup of tea, steam rising like trapped ghosts. "What did you give me?" "A mild stimulant. I need you alert for today's lesson." He settled into his usual chair, crossing his legs. "Tell me, have you been thinking about our discussions?" Their discussions, his twisted lectures on Brandon's supposed crimes, Elena's death, the justice of contracts, had become routine. She'd stopped arguing days ago, saving her energy for survival. "Let's skip the games," she said, her voice hoarse. "What do you want today?" "Progress. You've proven surprisingly resilient. Most would have broken by now." "Sorry to disappoint." His smile thinned. Not disappointed, intrigued. Brandon chose better than he knew. He opened the folder, extracting documents. "But even the strongest walls crumble eventually. Shall we test yours?" He pressed a button on the wall. A screen descended, flickering to life. Brandon's face filled the display, her heart clenched. He looked destroyed, unshaven, hollow-eyed, still wearing the torn clothes from his birthday. He sat in what appeared to be a concrete cell, staring directly at the camera. "Brandon," she breathed, "he can't hear you, but he can see everything." Strand's voice was silk over steel. "Wave to your husband, Ms. Morris." She raised her hand, hating herself for the weakness, but unable to resist. On screen, Brandon's face crumpled. His lips moved, her name, perhaps, or a promise. "Now then." Strand placed the documents on her bedside table. "Let's discuss the true nature of the contract your husband signed. I know about the contract. 5 years of celibacy, or you know nothing." His voice sharpened. The celibacy clause was merely window dressing, a distraction from the real terms. He spread the pages before her. Dense legal text swam before her eyes, but certain phrases stood out. Complete transfer of assets, forfeiture of personal autonomy, subsidiary rights regarding legal spouse. Brandon understood he was signing over more than money, Strand continued. "In the event of breach, everything becomes mine, including, by extension, you. I'm not property. According to this contract, in the event of breach, you very much are. Your husband's assets include all personal relationships and their incumbent rights." His finger traced the relevant passage. "Legally binding in 12 countries, including several with flexible interpretations of personal freedom." Horror crept through her. "You can't." "I can. I have. You're currently in international waters, on a vessel registered in a country where such contracts are quite enforceable." He leaned back, watching her face. "Your husband knew this. He signed anyway. To save his life, to protect me from you. To protect you." Strand laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "My dear girl, he made you the collateral. Every day he resisted. Untouching you, he was gambling with your freedom, and now he's lost." On the screen, Brandon had stood, pacing his cell. Even in captivity, he moved with dangerous grace. Her protector, her prisoner, her love who doomed them both. "What happens now?" she asked. "That depends entirely on you." Strand retrieved a second document. "Sign this, and your ordeal ends. Refuse and, Brandon watches as I explore the full extent of my legal rights." She took the paper with trembling hands. The text was simple, brutal. "I, Virginia Morris, acknowledge that my marriage to Brandon Wood was entered into under false pretenses. I renounce all claims to his affection, assets, and attention. I agree to permanent separation and waive all rights to future contact." An annulment. She looked up. "That's what this is about. Freedom, Ms. Morris. Yours and his. Sign, and I'll release you both. Refuse to acknowledge the marriage was a sham, and I'll be forced to prove it through other means." The threat hung heavy in the sterile air. She thought of Brandon in his cell, watching, What would he want her to do? Sign away their marriage to save herself, or resist and face whatever horrors Strand had planned? You said Brandon knew the real contract terms, she said slowly. If that's true, why did he marry me? Why risk this? Something flickered in Strand's eyes. Surprise. Respect? An excellent question. Shall we ask him? He pressed another button. The screen split, showing both Brandon's cell and her hospital room. For the first time, they could see each other. Ginny. Brandon's voice cracked through speakers, raw with emotion. Brandon, touching reunion, Strand interrupted. Mr. Wood, your wife has a question. Why did you marry her knowing what the contract truly meant, knowing that any breach would make her mine? Brandon's face twisted with anguish. He pressed his palms against the camera as if he could reach through the screen to touch her. Because I couldn't stay away, he said. Because one dance at that charity gala and I was lost. Because I thought I could control it, keep the distance, have her in my life without truly having her. And, Strand prompted, and I was a fool, a selfish fool who trapped the woman I love in my nightmare. Tears ran down Ginny's face. I chose this. I chose you. You chose a lie, Strand corrected. He never told you the truth, never warned you what you were truly signing up for. Because I was a coward, Brandon said. Because I thought if you knew, you'd run. And I'd rather have you at arm's length than not at all. Selfish, Strand agreed. Cruel even. And now she pays the price. He held out an elegant pen to Ginny. Sign. Free yourself from his selfishness. Start clean. The pen felt heavy in her hand. Such a simple solution, a signature, and this nightmare would end. They'd be free apart, but safe. She looked at the screen, at Brandon's tortured face. 3 years of marriage, of careful distances and unspoken longing. 3 years of loving a man who'd gambled her freedom on his ability to resist her. No! The word surprised even her. She set down the pen, meeting Strand's gaze steadily. I won't sign. Brave. Stupid, but brave. Strand's mask of civility cracked slightly. You understand what this means? What I'm legally entitled to do? I understand you're a monster who destroyed Elena and now wants to destroy us. But I won't help you do it. Ginny, no! Brandon's voice was desperate. Sign it, please. Don't let pride... It's not pride. She addressed the camera, speaking directly to him. It's love. You made a terrible choice, yes. You bound us both in this nightmare, but I won't let him win by denying what we have. How touching. Strand stood, his calm restored, but also irrelevant. If you won't sign voluntarily, he pressed a final button. The door opened, admitting 2 guards and a woman in medical scrubs. Dr. Reeves specializes in persuasion, chemical, psychological, physical. Strand gathered his documents. I'll give you 24 hours to reconsider. After that, the good doctor begins her work, and Brandon watches every moment. The screen flickered, showing a close-up of Brandon's face. His eyes were wild, desperate. Strand, he roared. If you touch her, I'll kill you. Contract or no contract, I'll find a way. Empty threats from a caged man. Strand paused at the door. 24 hours, Ms. Morris. Sign or discover just how creative Dr. Reeves can be. The door closed. The guards took positions outside. Dr. Reeves began preparing syringes, humming tunelessly. On the screen, Brandon had sunk to his knees, his control finally shattered. Ginny, please, sign it. I'm not worth this. We're not worth this. Yes, we are. She kept her voice steady, though tears streamed down her face. You kept your distance for 3 years to protect me. Let me be strong for you now. This isn't strength, it's suicide. He'll break you, maybe, but I won't break us. I won't give him that victory. Dr. Reeves approached with the first syringe. This won't hurt. Much. As the needle pierced her skin, as chemicals flooded her system, Ginny kept her eyes on the screen, on Brandon's face, on the love that had survived 3 years of careful distances and was about to face its greatest test. "I love you," she whispered as the drugs took hold. "Remember that, whatever happens next, whatever they make me say or do, I love you." The world blurred, shifted, became strange, but through it all she held on to one truth. Love was stronger than contracts, stronger than torture, stronger than fear. She just had to prove it. The 24 hours had begun, and with in them, the true test of what 3 years of untouchable love had built between them. In his cell, Brandon watched the woman he loved disappear into chemical haze. In her white room, Ginny felt reality bend and twist. And somewhere in his private study, Victor Strand smiled at monitors showing both feeds. The game was entering its final phase. And he'd waited 5 long years for this show. The contracts were signed, the players positioned. Let the real performance begin. Chapter 8. The Trap. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom glittered with New York's elite, a sea of designer gowns and practiced smiles. Ginny stood beside Brandon at the entrance, her arm linked through his, playing her part in their desperate gambit. 6 weeks had passed since Strand's Island. 6 weeks since Brandon had somehow orchestrated their escape, the details still fuzzy in her mind, lost in the haze of drugs and trauma. She remembered helicopters, gunfire, Brandon's arms around her as they fled across moonlit water. Then hospitals, debriefings, the slow return to a life that would never be the same. Now they stood at the threshold of their carefully planned trap, about to bait the spider from his web. "Ready?" Brandon murmured, his breath warm against her ear. She nodded, adjusting the stunning red dress that clung to her curves. Every detail had been calculated, the plunging neckline, the slit that revealed her leg with each step, the diamonds at her throat catching light like drops of fire. She was the bait, glittering and irresistible. "Remember," Brandon continued, his hand possessive on her waist, "Strand's watching. Every camera, every witness. We need to give him a show he can't resist." The past weeks had been an exercise in careful planning. In public, they'd maintained their distance, the perfect picture of a couple traumatized by their ordeal. But behind closed doors, they'd plotted Strand's downfall with the intensity of lovers planning an elopement. The torture had changed things between them. The chemicals, the mind games, Strand's attempts to break her will, all of it had stripped away pretense. She'd seen into Brandon's soul through those video feeds, witnessed his complete destruction at her suffering. And he'd seen her strength, her refusal to betray their love, even under duress. They were still bound by the contracts, terms, still unable to consummate their marriage. But the emotional walls had crumbled entirely. "He's here," Brandon said softly, his body tensing beside her. Across the ballroom, Victor Strand held court near the orchestra, surrounded by admirers who had no idea they were chatting with a monster. He looked unchanged, silver-haired, distinguished, sipping champagne as if he hadn't orchestrated torture just weeks ago. "Showtime," Ginny whispered. They made their entrance, commanding the room's attention. Whispers trailed in their wake. The tragic couple, the kidnapping victims, subjects of endless tabloid speculation. Ginny played her role flawlessly, leaning into Brandon, their bodies telling a story of newfound intimacy. During the cocktail hour, she felt Strand's eyes tracking their every move. When Brandon's hand slipped lower on her back, when she turned, her face into his neck to whisper something that made him smile, all of it calculated to suggest a couple no longer holding back. "May I have this dance?" They'd reached the dance floor just as the orchestra began a slow waltz. Brandon pulled her into his arms, closer than propriety allowed, her body molded to his, and she saw several society matrons raise their eyebrows. "He's watching," she murmured against his collar. "Good. Let him see what he'll never have again." Brandon's hand splayed possessively across her back. "You're mine, Ginny. Contract or no contract." They danced like lovers, bodies pressed together, her fingers in his hair, his face buried in her neck. To observers, they were a couple lost in each other, finally free to express their passion after trauma had taught them life's fragility. "Now," Brandon whispered. She tilted her face up, her lips a breath from his. The room seemed to hold its breath. Cameras flashed, and just before their mouths met, Brandon spun her away in a perfect dip, leaving the kiss unconsummated, but its promise clear. The music ended to scattered applause. As Brandon led her from the floor, she caught Strand's expression, hungry, furious, hooked. "Mr. and Mrs. Wood." Strand's voice cut through the crowd noise. He approached with predatory grace, his smile sharp as winter. "Victor." Brandon's arm tightened around Ginny's waist. "Surprised to see you here. I never miss the Children's Hospital benefit. Such a worthy cause." His grey eyes fixed on Ginny. "You look recovered, my dear. Island life must have agreed with you." "Recovery is a process," she replied, letting a tremor enter her voice. "Some wounds take time to heal." "Indeed, though you both seem to be healing quite dramatically." He gestured to their intimate posture. "One might almost think you've forgotten our agreement entirely. Your agreement was nullified when you kidnapped my wife." Brandon's voice was ice. "Kidnapped? Such an ugly word. I merely enforced contract terms, which, I note, remain in effect." Strand's smile widened. 3 more months, isn't it? Unless you'd care to test those terms tonight? I saw that almost kiss, quite convincing. "There's nothing to test," Ginny said. "We know exactly where the lines are drawn." "Do you? How fascinating." Strand stepped closer, voice dropping. "Because from where I stand, you're playing with fire. And we all know how your husband handles heat, poorly, as Elena discovered." Brandon moved so fast that security stirred. He didn't touch Strand, but sudden violence hung in the air between them. "Careful," Strand purred. "Assault would violate several clauses. Though I suppose you're past caring about contracts now?" "Actually," Ginny interjected, her hand on Brandon's arm, "we care very much about contracts, don't we, darling?" She felt Brandon relax fractionally as he caught her meaning. This was the moment they'd rehearsed. "Yes," he said slowly. "In fact, we've been reviewing the terms extensively. Our lawyers have found some interesting interpretations." "Lawyers?" Strand's confidence flickered. "The best money can buy. They've raised questions about the validity of certain clauses. Apparently, contracts signed under duress can be challenged, especially when one party has a history of violence against the other's previous partners." The words hung between them like a loaded gun. Strand's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something dangerous beneath. "You're bluffing." "Are we?" Ginny smiled sweetly. "Why don't we find out? Continue your harassment, and we'll see you in court. Very publicly. With all the evidence we've gathered over 5 years. Evidence you can't have, can't we?" Brandon's smile was predatory. 5 years is a long time, Victor. Long enough to track financial records, interview witnesses, compile a very comprehensive file on your activities. Elena's family has been particularly helpful. It was their biggest gamble, the suggestion that Catherine Vega had turned against Strand. In truth, she remained terrified, hidden, but the doubt in Strand's eyes was worth the risk. "This is a dangerous game you're playing," he said softly. "No game." Ginny pressed closer to Brandon, her body language screaming possession. "We're done being your puppets. Touch either of us again, and everything goes public. Your contracts, your methods, your interests, all of it." Around them, the gala continued, laughter, music, the clink of glasses. But in their small circle, war had been declared. "You have no idea who you're threatening," Strand said. "We know exactly who you are," Brandon replied. "The question is, does the rest of the world need to know too?" For a long moment, Strand studied. "Who, them?" Then his composure returned, smooth as silk. 3 months, he said. "The contract stands until then. After that," he shrugged elegantly, We'll see what your evidence is worth." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Ginny felt Brandon's body trembling against hers, rage or relief. She couldn't tell. "Did it work?" she whispered. "Hooks set. Now we wait for him to take the bait." They continued their performance for another hour, dancing too close, whispering, intimately, presenting the image of a couple barely restraining themselves. Every gesture was calculated to drive Strand mad, with the certainty they'd already broken the contract in private. When they finally left, Brandon's hand possessive on her lower back, Ginny felt eyes following them. Not just Strand's. His people were everywhere, watching, recording, waiting for proof of breach. In the limo, Brandon immediately activated the privacy screen and swept the interior for bugs. Only when he was satisfied did he allow himself to relax. "You were perfect," he said, pulling her against his side. "I had good motivation." She nestled into him, exhausted from the performance. "Do you think he bought it?" He's suspicious but hooked. The mention of Elena's family shook him. Brandon pressed a kiss to her temple, the safest show of affection they allowed themselves. "He'll investigate, discover our lawyers have indeed been asking questions. When he can't confirm or deny what evidence we have, he'll get desperate. And desperation makes him sloppy." "Exactly." They rode in silence for a while, the city lights streaming past. 3 months suddenly seemed both endless and insignificant. After everything they'd survived, what was another season of waiting? "Ginny?" That moment on the dance floor, when I almost kissed you." His voice was rough. Every instinct screamed at me to close that distance. "Contract be damned." She turned in his arms, studying his face. "I know. I felt it too." 3 more months. It had become their mantra, their prayer. Less now. We're already into month 4. He touched her face, tracing her features without quite making contact, their strange language of almost touches that had developed since the island. "When this is over," he said, "when Strand is destroyed and we're finally free, you'll worship." "Every inch of me," she finished, smiling. "So you've said." "No." His expression was intensely serious. "When this is over, I'm never letting you out of my sight again, never letting you go. We'll leave New York, disappear somewhere he can never, find us and spend the rest of our lives making up for lost time. Promise? I swear it." The limo pulled up to their building. As they entered the private elevator, both knew they were still being watched. The performance continued. Intimate looks, possessive touches that skirted the edge of contract violation. But upstairs, in their carefully swept penthouse, they finally dropped the act. Brandon poured drinks while Ginny kicked off her heels, suddenly exhausted. "Phase 1 complete," she said, accepting the whiskey gratefully. "Think he'll make a move soon?" "Within days. He can't resist a challenge to his control." Brandon sat beside her, close but not touching. "The investigation is already in motion. Our people are watching his people. When he discovers we weren't bluffing about the lawyers, about the evidence, he'll panic. And panicked men make mistakes." She studied him over her glass, her husband, her protector, her partner in this dangerous game. The weeks since the island had changed him too. Harder, more focused, but also more present. As if seeing her tortured had finally shattered his. "Careful control, Brandon." "Yes. What really happened on the island? How did you get us out?" His expression darkened. "You don't want to know." "I do." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I killed 3 men with my bare hands when I saw what they were doing to you, saw you convulsing from their drugs." He set down his glass, hands shaking. "I became someone else, someone I'd buried after Elena died, someone capable of anything. To save me, to save us. And I'd do it again, 1,000 times." He looked at her then, and the raw emotion in his eyes took her breath away. "You're my wife, Ginny. Contract or no contract, touching or no touching, you're mine. and I protect what's mine." She reached for his hand, then caught herself. The gesture had become automatic. Reach, stop, retreat. Their dance of almosts. "Soon," she whispered. "Soon," he agreed. Outside, the city sparkled with false promises. Somewhere in his tower, Victor Strand was likely reviewing footage from the gala, looking for proof of contract breach. Let him look. Their trap was baited, their evidence compiled, their lawyers briefed. The countdown had begun, not just to contractual freedom, but to Strand's destruction. 3 months. After 3 years of waiting, what was 3 more months? In the distance, thunder rolled. Storm season was coming to Manhattan, and Ginny smiled, thinking of spiders and webs, and what happened when lightning struck. Chapter 9. Courtroom Climax. The New York Supreme Court building rose like a temple to justice, its classical columns stark against the September sky. Ginny stood beside Brandon on the courthouse steps, surrounded by their legal team and a mob of reporters who'd been following the story for weeks. "Mrs. Wood, is it true Victor Strand held you captive?" "Mr. Wood, what evidence do you have of conspiracy? Will you testify about the torture?" Brandon's hand was firm on her elbow as they pushed through the crowd. 3 months had passed since the gala. 3 months of legal maneuvering, of evidence gathering, of Strand's increasingly desperate attempts to silence them. The spider had finally been dragged from his web. Inside the courthouse, the hallways echoed with footsteps and whispered negotiations. Ginny had testified yesterday, describing her captivity in clinical detail, while Brandon watched from the gallery, his knuckles white as he gripped the railing. Today was the day everything would be revealed. Elena's murder, the contract's true. Purpose, 5 years of psychological torture. "Ready?" their lead attorney Margaret Chen asked as they approached the courtroom. "Beyond ready," Brandon replied. They entered to find the room already packed. Media, legal observers, curiosity seekers, all drawn to the scandal of the decade. And there at the defendant's table sat Victor Strand. He looked older, grayer, his usually impeccable appearance slightly frayed. The past months had taken their toll. His empire was crumbling, investors fleeing, allies abandoning ship, but his eyes still held that reptilian coldness as they tracked Ginny across the room. "All rise," the Honorable Judge Martinez presiding. The session began with procedural matters, but tension crackled through the air. This was the day Brandon would testify, would finally reveal the full truth about Elena's death and the contract that had imprisoned their marriage. The prosecution calls Brandon Wood to the stand. Ginny watched her husband walk to the witness box with measured steps. He looked devastating in his charcoal suit, every inch the powerful businessman. But she saw the tension in his shoulders, the carefully controlled rage in his movements. After the swearing-in, Prosecutor Davies began his questioning. "Mr. Wood, please describe your relationship with the defendant." Brandon's voice was steady, controlled. "Victor Strand was my business rival. We competed for several major contracts in the early 2010s. The competition was intense. And this competition led to your engagement to Elena Vega. Indirectly, Elena's family owned patents Strand wanted. When she and I became involved, he saw it as a threat to his acquisition plans. Tell us about the night Miss Vega died." The courtroom fell silent. Brandon's jaw tightened, but his voice remained clear. October 15th, 2019. Elena had been receiving threats, anonymous at first, then more specific. "I hired security, but she felt suffocated. That night she insisted on driving to her family's estate alone. She said she needed space to think." "About what?" "About us, about the threats, about—" Brandon paused, his eyes finding Ginny's in the gallery. "About whether being with me was worth the danger." What happened next? Her car went off the cliff road at Thornwood Curve. The official report cited brake failure, but I knew His voice cracked slightly. I knew it was murder. How? Did you know? Because Strand visited me the next day. While I was still in shock, still planning her funeral, he came to my home with a contract. Davies lifted a document. This contract? Exhibit 47A? Yes. Please explain its terms to the court. Brandon took a breath. On the surface, it appeared to be a business agreement. Strand would cease certain hostile takeover attempts, restore my company's market value, and guarantee the safety of any future romantic partners. In exchange, I agreed to 5 years of celibacy, no physical intimacy with any woman. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Judge Martinez banged his gavel for silence. But that wasn't the real purpose, was it? Davies prompted. No, the real purpose was control, psychological torture. The contract contained hidden clauses. If I violated the celibacy requirement, everything I owned would transfer to Strand, including... He paused, his eyes finding Ginny again. Including rights. To my spouse. You signed this contract knowing these terms. I signed it believing I was protecting future partners from Elena's fate. I didn't understand the full implications until later. When did you realize the contract's true nature? When I met my wife. Brandon's voice softened. I tried to stay, away from Ginny, knowing the danger, but I couldn't. I thought I could have her in my life without physical intimacy. I thought I could protect her by maintaining the contract's requirements. And did you maintain those requirements? Yes. For 3 years, despite being desperately in love with my wife, I never once broke the contract's terms. Until... Objection. Strand's lawyer, Reeves, stood. Relevance goes to motive, Your Honor, Davies responded. The defendant's actions were predicated on the belief that the contract had been violated. Overruled. Continue, Mr. Wood. Brandon straightened. On my birthday this year, April 15th, my wife kissed my palm during a private dinner. Strand's surveillance captured this and declared it a breach of contract. A kiss on the palm. He interpreted any intimate contact as violation. His men invaded our home, kidnapped my wife, and held her at a private medical facility where she was subjected to psychological and chemical torture. The word hung heavy in the air. Torture. Several jury members shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Wood, Davies continued, new evidence has come to light regarding Elena Vega's death. Can you tell us about that? This was it, the revelation they'd been building toward. Brandon's hands gripped the witness box. 6 weeks ago, we received a package from Elena Vega's sister, Catherine. She'd been terrified into silence for years, but recent events convinced her to come forward. What was in the package? Elena's diary and correspondence between her and Victor Strand. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. At the defendant's table, Strand had gone rigid. What did these documents reveal? Brandon's voice was ice. Elena was pregnant when she died. The father wasn't me, it was Victor Strand. They'd been having an affair for months. When she tried to end it, when she chose me instead, he threatened to destroy us both unless she terminated the pregnancy and left. Me! Objection, hearsay. Your Honor, Davies interjected. The diary has been authenticated by 3 independent experts. The correspondence bears Mr. Strand's verified signature. Overruled. Continue. Brandon leaned forward, his eyes locked on Strand. The night Elena died, she was driving to confront him, to tell him she was keeping the baby and marrying me regardless of his threats. She never made it. These are lies, Strand erupted, shooting to his feet. Fabrications. That diary is fake. Judge Martinez slammed his gavel. Mr. Strand, control yourself or I'll have you removed. But Strand was beyond control. His careful mask had finally shattered, revealing the monster beneath. She was mine, he snarled at Brandon. "Elena was always mine. You stole her, turned her against me. She was carrying my child, and you—" He lunged across the courtroom. Chaos erupted. Security moved to intercept, but Strand was faster than his age suggested. He cleared the bar, hands reaching for Brandon's throat. Brandon didn't move from the witness box. As Strand charged, he simply stepped aside, using the man's momentum against him. Strand crashed into the witness stand, sprawling across the floor, but he came up with something in his hand, a letter opener snatched from the court clerk's desk. Before security could reach him, he spun toward the gallery, toward Ginny. "If I can't have everything," he hissed, "I'll take what matters most." Time slowed. Ginny saw the blade flashing, saw Strand's crazed eyes fixed on her. She heard Brandon roar her name, saw him leap from the witness box, but Brandon was too far away. Strand was already there. The weapon raised, Ginny didn't think. 3 months of self-defense training took over. As Strand lunged, she sidestepped, caught his wrist, and used his weight against him. The letter opener clattered across the floor as Strand hit the ground hard. Security swarmed him then, pinning him down. He fought like a wild animal, screaming threats and obscenities. "You're all dead, all of you. I own judges, politicians, police. Commissioners, you can't touch me. I'll destroy everyone you love." Brandon was at Ginny's side instantly, pulling her against him as chaos reigned around them. For the first time in 3 years, he held her without reservation, without fear of contracts or consequences. "Are you hurt? Ginny, are you—" "I'm fine." She was shaking but whole. "I'm fine." Judge Martinez was hammering his gavel, calling for order. Security dragged a still screaming Strand from the courtroom. Gradually, shocked silence fell. "Given the defendant's outburst and confession," the judge said grimly, "I'm ruling all contracts between Mr. Strand and Mr. Wood null and void, effective immediately. Furthermore, I'm recommending additional charges of attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud. Court is adjourned pending formal charging." The gavel fell one final time. It was over. In the stunned silence that followed, Ginny became aware of 2 things. First, that Brandon was still holding her, his arms tight around her as if he'd never let go. And second, that nothing now stood between them. No contract, no surveillance, no carefully maintained distance. "Brandon," she whispered. He pulled back just enough to see her face. His eyes were wild, desperate, blazing with 3 years of suppressed desire. "We're free," he said hoarsely. "Ginny, we're finally—" She kissed him, there in the middle of the courtroom, surrounded by press and lawyers and shocked observers. She claimed the kiss they'd been denied for 3 long years. His response was immediate, overwhelming. His hands tangled in her hair, his mouth desperate against hers. 3 years of careful control shattered in an instant, leaving only raw need, pure love. Cameras flashed. People cheered. Someone, probably their attorney, suggested they might want privacy. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. "Home," Brandon said roughly. "Now." They barely made it to the car before his mouth was on hers again. The driver raised the privacy partition without being asked, as Brandon pulled Ginny into his lap, his hands finally allowed to touch, to explore, to claim. 3 years, he murmured against her throat. 3 years of dying every time I couldn't touch you. "Never again," she gasped, arching against him. "Never again will anything keep us apart." The drive home blurred into desperate kisses, whispered promises, hands exploring through clothing. When they reached their building, Brandon swept her into the elevator. The moment their penthouse door closed, 3 years of pent-up desire exploded. Clothes were torn away, furniture knocked aside. They barely made it to the bedroom, too desperate to care about propriety or patience. When Brandon finally made love to his wife, truly, completely, without fear or contracts or consequences, the intensity of it shattered them both. 3 years of careful distance dissolved into skin against skin, hearts beating in unison, souls finally, truly united. Later, much later, they lay tangled in destroyed sheets, watching the sun set over Manhattan. Ginny traced patterns on Brandon's chest, marveling at the simple freedom of touch. "It's really over," she murmured. "Strand's going to prison, multiple life sentences if Davies has his way." Brandon's arms tightened around her. "He'll never hurt anyone again." "And us?" He tilted her face up, kissing her softly. "We have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time. Starting now." She smiled against his mouth. "I love you, Brandon Wood, contract or no contract, distance or no distance. I've loved you from that first dance." "And I love you," he replied. "My wife, my heart, my salvation, you saved me today, in more ways than one." As darkness fell over the city, they made love again, slower this time, savoring each touch, each kiss, each whispered endearment. 3 years of careful choreography replaced by the natural rhythm of lovers who'd waited too long to be together. In the morning, the headlines would scream about Strand's downfall, about the dramatic courtroom confrontation, about the kiss that sealed a love story 3 years in the making. But tonight, in their bedroom high above Manhattan, Brandon and Ginny Wood were simply a husband and wife, finally free to love without limits, without fear, without contracts written in cruelty. The Vaishim. Spider's web had been swept away, the prison doors thrown open, and in the wreckage of Victor Strand's empire, love had finally, triumphantly won. Chapter 10. Love Triumphant. 3 months later, the first rays of dawn painted their Malibu bedroom in gold and rose. Ginny woke to Brandon's lips trailing down her neck, his hands already exploring beneath the silk nightgown she'd worn to bed, one of many she'd bought to replace the years of sensible pajamas. "Again?" she murmured, arching into his touch even as she teased. "We just 3 hours ago," he growled against her throat. "I'm making up for 3 years. We have a deficit to fill." She laughed, then gasped as his mouth found sensitive skin. 3 months since the courtroom victory, and Brandon remained insatiable, as if he feared she might vanish if he stopped. Touching her. Every morning began like this, every evening ended tangled together, and the hours between were filled with stolen kisses, heated glances, hands that couldn't stay away. "The beach," she breathed as he moved lower. "You promised we'd watch the sunrise on the beach." Later. His hands gripped her hips possessively. Much later. An hour later, they lay breathless and satisfied, wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets, and each other. Ginny traced patterns on Brandon's chest, marveling that she could finally do this, touch him freely, love him completely. "I love you," she whispered, the words she'd held back for so many careful years, now spoken dozens of times. Each day, he caught her hand, pressing it to his heart. "And I worship you, my wife, my salvation, my everything." They'd fled New York exactly 1 week after the trial, needing distance from memories of surveillance and separation. The Malibu house had been an impulse buy, all glass and light, with bedrooms they immediately christened, and a kitchen where they cooked together between urgent embraces against the counter. "Breakfast," she suggested, though neither moved. "If we must." But his hands were already wandering again, hunger of a different kind in his eyes. The phone rang, shattering their bubble. Brandon cursed, reaching for it. Wood, his business voice, though his free hand never left her skin. A pause. "I see." "No, we won't be returning for that. Handle it." He hung up, tossing the phone aside. "Strand's lawyer. Something about appeals." "I don't care. He's really gone, really locked away. Multiple life sentences. He'll die in that cell." Brandon's eyes darkened. "He stole 3 years from us. He'll lose 30, 40, however many he has left." She kissed him softly. "No more talk of him. He's the past. This is our future. Our future. He rolled her beneath him, his gaze intense. Do you know what I thought about during those 3 years, besides ways to destroy Strand? Tell me. This. Waking up with you in my arms. Kissing you whenever I wanted. Making love to you in every room of whatever home we shared. His voice roughened. I used to stand outside your door at night, listening to you breathe, imagining what it would be like to slide into bed beside you, to pull you against me, to finally claim you as mine. Brandon, I dreamed of your skin against mine, of how you'd taste, how you'd sound when I touched you. 3 years of torture, wanting you so badly I couldn't breathe. He kissed her deeply, desperately. Now I have you and I'm terrified I'll wake up and find it's just another dream. I'm real, she assured him, wrapping her legs around his waist. I'm here. I'm yours. Always. They made love again, slow and intense, eyes locked, souls bared. When release claimed them, they cried out together, not quietly as they might have during the careful years, but freely, loudly, celebrating their freedom to love without limits. Later, they walked the beach hand in hand, watching surfers catch morning waves. Ginny wore one of Brandon's shirts over her bikini, the ocean breeze lifting her hair. He couldn't stop touching her, her hand, her waist, tucking strands behind her ear. I've been thinking, she said, squeezing his fingers. Dangerous occupation. She hip-checked him playfully. About children. Now that we can actually... Well... He stopped walking, turning to face her. Children. You don't want them. Are you kidding? He cupped her face, thumbs stroking her cheeks. I want everything with you. Children, grandchildren, a house full of life and laughter, and tiny versions of your smile. When? Now. Yesterday. The moment you're ready. He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. Though at the rate we're going, it might already be decided. She laughed, remembering their abandoned contraception, their reckless abandon. The doctor did say my body might be extra fertile after 3 years of waiting. Then let's get you pregnant. His eyes gleamed wickedly, immediately, repeatedly, enthusiastically. Here? On the beach? Why not? He was already backing her toward a secluded cove. I've fantasized about making love to you on a beach since St. Lucia, since you tempted me in that sundress, and I had to pretend I didn't want to devour you whole. Brandon. But she was laughing, running with him toward the hidden spot where rocks provided privacy. He caught her at the water's edge, spinning her around before laying her on the soft sand. The ocean lapped at their feet as he kissed her senseless, his hands reacquainting themselves with every curve. Someone might see, she gasped, even as she pulled his shirt off. Let them. Let the whole world know you're mine. He scattered kisses down her throat. My wife, my love, my obsession. They came together urgently, salt air and sunshine on their skin, waves providing rhythm to their passionate reunion. When they collapsed together afterward, sandy and satisfied, Ginny couldn't stop smiling. 3 years of careful distance, she mused, trailing fingers down his back. Now I can't keep you off me for 3 hours. Complaint? Observation. A wonderful, delicious observation. She kissed his shoulder. I love how you can't stop touching me, how you reach for me in your sleep, how you look at me like you're starving even right after we've... He silenced her with another kiss. I'll never get enough. Never stop wanting you. 50 years from now, I'll still be chasing you around our beach house. Promise? Swear it. They rinsed off in the ocean, playful and passionate by turns. Back at the house, they showered together, another activity that inevitably led to steamy encounters against tile walls. By the time they managed breakfast, it was nearly noon. We're terrible at normal life, Ginny observed, wearing nothing but Brandon's robe while she scrambled eggs. We're excellent at married life, he corrected, pressing against her back, hands sliding inside the robe. The kind of marriage we should have had from the start. Brandon, the eggs. Forget the eggs. He spun her around, lifting her onto The counter. I'm hungry for something else. The eggs burned. They ordered takeout instead, eating it in bed between lazy kisses and wandering hands. Outside, California sunshine beckoned, but they were content in their private paradise. I keep waiting for the novelty to wear off, Ginny confessed that evening as they watched the sunset from their deck. For us to settle into normal married routine. Never. Brandon pulled her into his lap, nuzzling her neck. 3 years of deprivation has made me permanently insatiable. You'll be fighting me off with a stick in our 80s. Fighting you? Off? Unlikely. She turned to straddle him, her sundress riding up. I have my own 3 years of frustration to work through. His hands gripped her thighs. Then we're perfectly matched. 2 addicts feeding each other's obsession. Forever. Forever. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, they came together once more. Slower this time, savoring each touch, each kiss, each whispered endearment. 3 years of careful choreography had given way to this: natural rhythm, perfect harmony, love without limits. In the distance, dolphins played in the waves. Seabirds called overhead, and in a house by the sea, 2 people who'd loved through impossible circumstances celebrated their freedom the only way they knew how, completely, passionately, endlessly. Victor Strand rotted in prison, already forgotten. The contracts were ashes scattered to the wind, and Brandon and Ginny Wood had the rest of their lives to make up for lost time, starting now, continuing forever, with a love that had survived the impossible and emerged stronger than ever. The stars were just beginning to appear when Brandon carried her inside again, desire renewed by the simple act of breathing the same air. I love you, he murmured against her lips. I loved you through 3 years of careful distance. I'll love you through 50 years of reckless closeness. Just 50? Eternity, then. Whatever time we're given, it won't be enough. She smiled, pulling him down to her. Then we'd better make every moment count. And they did.
Thanks for watching!